Hey YouTube, what's up? It's CS back here with another installment, and here are my picks for UFC 137, Penn versus Diaz. Alrighty guys, well yes, I'm back with a new video for UFC 137. Unfortunately, of course, my initial video went awry because of all the injuries that happened to this card. Real unfortunate stuff, and I hope everyone who got bit by the injury bug, a speedy recovery. So, just get well. Everyone who got injured, of course, that includes the person in the initial main event, the welterweight champion, St-Pierre. He was supposed to go up against my boy, Carlos Condit, for the welterweight title. You know, we're going to have to wait for that one, so hopefully we see that in the near future. Yeah, it would be nice. But in place of that shit, we had the co-main event bout, and BJ Penn, Nick Diaz moved up to the main event slot. So, yeah, there it is. And, of course, from the preliminary card, Scott Jorgensen and Jeff Curran in their bantamweight bout. They're in the main card now. So, big ups to those bantamweights. Hopefully they throw on the show. But for now, you know, I will take a look again at what I have for this contest for UFC 137. Of course, now it's for the main event. There it is. BJ Penn, why fight? The belt is just an accessory. Just tell me who you think is going to win between BJ Penn and Nick Diaz in the comment section below. Pick a winner, pick an outcome, and if you're correct, you're eligible to win this if you are subscribed. So again, if you got all that criteria down, in the end, I'll pick one lucky person, and yeah, that could be theirs. Alrighty, YouTube. Alright, let's move on. We got that contest shit out of the way with now. Let's take a look at the first bout of the main card. It is still Aoki versus Roop. In featherweight, of course. Now, Aoki's making his UFC debut, of course. One of my favorite fighters. And, yeah, I think he's the one guy who has a shot at dethroning Aldo. That being said, who knows how he's going to look in his first bout in the UFC. I think he's going to be a relatively slow starter against Roop. However, you know, I've counted Roop out countless times, and he's been able to, you know, just do his thing, you know, here and there. Of course, he had that flashy head kick win over Chen Sung-Young, and then he knocked Josh Grisby out with a body shot. Some pretty impressive wins right there, what can I say, but I really don't think he has what it takes to beat Aoki. I don't see him even having a puncher's chance to just outclass Aoki. Aoki's outstruck strikers before, and he's never been finished at all. So I don't see how Roop gets it done. Aoki is usually the more lengthier fighter, and he doesn't have the reach this time against Roop, so he's going to have to do something. Instead of establishing a reach, he's going to have to get within someone's reach in Roop's, which I think he'll be able to do just fine. He's training with a lot of good strikers in TriStar in Montreal, and I think we're going to see a solid game plan from Aoki. Aoki's usually a patient fighter, though. I think he's just going to work combinations for the majority of round one, get within George Roop's reach, attack from different angles, and just frustrate Roop with combinations overall, kicks, punches, whatever. I just think he's more technical on the feet. But I see this going to the ground eventually. I just think that he eventually backs Roop up into the cage and then drops for a double leg. I think he gets it. I really don't give Roop that much credit for defensive wrestling. Aoki's takedowns aren't bad, and he should be able to get Roop to the ground. Once he does, I think he's going to work TKO Roop from there, but I think Roop is going to try to defend rather in a lackluster fashion. That's where I think Aoki goes for an armbar and gets it. I'm going to say that happens in round 2. So that's my pick. Round 2 armbar submission for Aoki. Alright, now let's move on. Let's take a look at the next bout. This one's between Jeff Curran and Scott Jorgensen in bantamweight. Of course, this is the bout they moved up from the preliminary card. And yeah, Jeff Curran's back in the UFC. Shit, this guy hasn't fought there in like 7 years, guys. To me, he has a reputation of being more of a tough guy journeyman than a good fighter. You know, he's not really good at anything. He's decent at a lot of stuff, but I really don't see how his skill set matches up well with Scott Jorgensen. I really don't see how he gets it done via decision, submission, or knockout. I think Jorgensen's pretty much better everywhere, especially wrestling. He's stronger. He's more athletic. He has more knockout power. Just a better fighter. I think he's a better fighter in terms of skill set and physique, and he should just dictate the pace of this fight against Jeff Curran. on defeat, he's going to come forward, throw combinations, look to knock Jeff Curran out. I think he'll be able to hurt Curran here and there. Curran has a very good chin, though. I don't see him getting put out on defeat. But I definitely see Scott Jorgensen taking this down to the ground and looking to TKO Jeff Curran from there. But, Jorgensen has a good guillotine. I think he gets one of those off somehow. So that's my pick. Scott Jorgensen via guillotine. I say that happens late into round 1. Now let's move on. Probably the easiest fight to predict on this card. Yeah, Roy Nelson versus Mirko Filipovic, aka Mirko Cro Cop. Cro Cop, honestly, should just quit. Like, he's horrible. The guy has no aggressiveness whatsoever anymore, and he doesn't even stalk you. Like, how does he get it done? Like, what is the mindset of that dude coming in that fight? What is his game plan? Because he just looks like a test dummy out there. It's kind of sad because this guy used to be a solid fighter and he used to be a menace in Pride, and he's going up there against dudes now in the UFC, and he's just kind of sitting back there and moving backwards sometimes instead of just stalking his opponent, which was his bread and butter. And of course, he'd snap off one of those, right kick, hospital left kick, cemetery shit. And we don't see that anymore from Cro Cop. And because of that, Roy Nelson's going to knock the shit out of you. Of course, Roy Nelson hasn't looked great at all in his last 2 bouts, or even good. The JDS bout and the Frank Mir bout, he got totaled by both guys, But to be fair, those guys are better fighters and they're more aggressive. And if you're not pushing the pace on Roy Nelson, you're going to let Roy Nelson get comfortable, and he's going to have his way with you, whether it is taking you down to the ground or knocking you out on the feet. He's going to go after you if you're not going to go after him. And due to Cro Cop's lack of aggressiveness, I see Roy Nelson going after him, and I don't see Cro Cop being able to counter whatsoever. So Roy Nelson, I think, is just going to go in there, throw haymakers. I think Cro Cop's going to be backing away, but as he is, I think he gets caught with one, and I look for Roy Nelson to finish him off with punches after he drops him. So that's my pick, Roy Nelson via TKO punches in round 1. Alright folks, now moving on, let's take a look at the next bout. This one's also in heavyweight. This one's between Cheick Kongo and Matt Mitrione. Now, what can I say about Cheick Kongo? Of course, he still has that knockout power to fall back on. We saw that in the Pat Barry fight. Knocked dude out when he was still rocked. Pretty noteworthy shit from Cheick Kongo. But in my opinion, what he's most noted for as of late is his ability to, just wall and stall. Get his opponent up against the cage, beat him up with dirty boxing and knees. He has a knack for doing that. And it could very well happen to Matt Mitrione, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Matt Mitrione is too good of an athlete and too savvy of a fighter. I think he's picking up this MMA game relatively easily. He's dictated the pace of every one of the fights he's been in so far. I really don't think this is going to be any exception. I think that, he will be able to keep this in the center of the octagon where I think he has the best shot at winning. I think he's going to be able to set up his combinations with low kicks and jabs. I think he's going to frustrate Kongo and avoid his power on the feet. I see him winning the fight up until where I think he takes him down sometime mid into round 1. Yes, I'm picking Matt Mitrione to wrestle. Kind of going out on a limb and saying that, but, I think it might happen. We saw some Rufus Sport guys make adjustments to their game by implementing wrestling. We saw Eric Koch stuff some takedowns against Jonathan Brookins. His takedown defense is very improved. And we saw Anthony Pettis wrestle against Jeremy Stevens. Really wasn't expecting that to happen, and it did. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mitrione do so in this bout. I think he does. I really don't see why you wouldn't. Cheick Kongo's takedown defense isn't great at all, and he's a fish out of water on the ground. So why not? I think Mitrione's going to look well-rounded. I know he's worked with Mark Munoz and probably with Ben Askren in Rufus Sport. So what can I say? I look for Mitrione to wrestle after he beats up Kongo with strikes, and I think he ends him in round 1 after he tries to TKO him with punches. I think Kongo rolls over. I think that's where Matt Mitrione sinks into hooks for a rear naked choke. So that's my pick, late round 1 submission for Matt Mitrione. All right, y'all, now let's move on to the main event, of course. BJ Penn versus Nick Diaz. Pretty solid main event still. I'm really not complaining. Both these guys are some of my favorite fighters, of course. BJ, I'm cheering for. I'm a bigger BJ fan. But Nick Diaz is dope, too. You can't hate on the guy. He's just too exciting of a fighter. Brings it every time. Solid cardio, solid boxing, solid jiu-jitsu. He's exciting. What can I say? On the ground, flashy-ass submissions. On the feet, that nasty pitter-patter style of boxing. He's easy to hit, but it's easier for him to hit you, and he does it so many times and is able to frustrate you to the point where, you take him down and you probably get submitted or you just fall, kind of like Paul Daly did. So, Nick Diaz, a very special fighter. Is he going to be able to dictate the pace of the fight against BJ Penn? Probably not, in my opinion, due to his lack of defense on the feet. I think BJ is also going to be successful with his solid boxing skills, possibly dropping Nick Diaz at times. But I think Nick Diaz's boxing will overwhelm BJ to the point where BJ doesn't want to get hit anymore. Although BJ does have a good head movement, he's not the easiest guy to hit, in my opinion. But I think Nick Diaz will be able to hit him possibly at will. And that's where I think BJ Penn is going to take Nick Diaz to the ground. I think he does enough on the ground on top of him to not get stood up, and I think he avoids some submissions, and I just think he beats up Nick Diaz a little bit, but I think it's going to be enough to win that round, and I think we're going to see a relatively even exchange on the feet throughout 2 and 3, but, I just don't see why BJ Penn doesn't take him down. I just think he might get frustrated with Nick Diaz's punching style, so if he does, I look for him to take him down, and I think that's what's going to happen. So after that, I really don't see where Nick Diaz gets real offensive on BJ. I think BJ is going to be, pretty active on top, and I think he's going to beat him up with punches and avoid Nick Diaz triangles. So that's my pick. BJ Penn via 30-27 unanimous decision. You know what? It's a fight that I would never bet on, unless someone gave me solid odds on either fighter, because to me, it's a coin flip. But I think BJ's wrestling is going to separate, the two in this fight. So that is my pick. Again, BJ Penn, unanimous decision. Again, enter my contest for this main event. Alrighty, folks. Now, there it is. That about does it for my UFC 137 Penn versus Diaz picks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that shit. And also take a look in the description below for my links to my social networking sites and also my preliminary card picks as well. So if you're interested in those, please take a look at them below. Also comment in the comment section below telling me who you think is going to win in the main event, BJ Penn or Nick Diaz, and tell me your thoughts on the remainder of the card and my picks as well there too. Again, if you get the main event right and you are subscribed, you're eligible to win this. So please enter that contest. And yeah, that about does it for me. So thank you again, YouTube, for all the support. My winner for this shit will be announced come my review, which should be up after the main event airs. So stay tuned for that. And I guess that about does it for me. So thanks again and take care.